It lasted 18 months and went bankrupt because of a wire, but the Pony Express has gone down in history as a symbol of the American Wild West. But why? Alright, so we're starting here in 1848. Gold was discovered in California, and there was sort of this rush thingy to get to it. In 1850, California became a state because, gold. And the problem arose on how to get messages and mail out to the other side of the continent in a decent amount of time. Well, that's where these three men come in. William Russell, Alexander Majors, and William Waddell. I just don't have the heart to call a man that looks like that Waddle. They already handled freight and short distance deliveries. They didn't have a Crips though, and saw a different answer to the need for faster transcontinental communication: individual riders. See, up to that point, it was typically done by stagecoach, but you needed 3 or 4 men to man one. They didn't cover as much ground as a lone horseman could, and possibly most importantly, it was a lot more difficult for a coach to outrun potential threats that more often than not were lone riders on horseback. Also, it took just under 25 days for a coach to make the southern route used by the Butterfield Overland Mail Company, who owned the U.S. Postal Service contract to deliver mail out west and back. By the way, the Butterfield in Butterfield Overland Mail Company was John Butterfield, who is possibly best known for co-founding American Express with this Wells guy and this Fargo guy. So they devised a route to be taken from St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento, California, setting up stations every 10 miles or so with fresh horses. They would require the smallest riders possible to cut down on weight, and they paid them rather well, about $125 a month, or roughly $4 grand in today's money. But considering skilled laborers at the time, like masons, were doing good to make $60 a month, the riders were doing pretty well. They also replaced the saddle with a mochila, again cutting down on weight and making it easier for the rider to get off the horse, grab the mochila, throw it on the fresh horse, jump on, and get going. Mochilas carried about 20 pounds in mail, another 20 pounds could be added to the horseback, and the riders were required to weigh under 125, and they only carried a revolver and a canteen. Each rider would take between 75 to 100 miles of the route before passing off his cargo to the next rider. Also keep in mind that the routes work both ways, not just east to west, but also west to east. Plus, they bought smaller horses, hence the Pony Express, that would be faster, seeing as they really only needed the horse to be able to run full blast for about 10 miles. They came up with and implemented this idea in about 2 months, which is pretty impressive, and claimed that they could deliver messages from Missouri to California in 10 days, which everyone laughed at because there was no way that was possible at the time. But on April 3rd, 1860, the first rider left St. Joseph, and on April 14th, the mail arrived in Sacramento, taking the 10 days they'd promised. Another trip from east to west had also started on the 3rd and also reached its destination 10 days later. Everything was trucking on along. Well, that is until May, when the Pyramid Lake War broke out in Nevada territory because the Paiutes got tired of people showing up and acting like they owned the place. Several of the Pony Express stations. Yeah, I had to. Anyway, they were built near water sources, and if you've ever been to or seen a picture of Nevada, you know those are a rather valuable commodity. And the Paiutes were already using them. Several of the stations were attacked, at least one was burned, the riders were chased and harassed, and 16 employees died before the Express stopped delivery west of Salt Lake City in June. By July, the U.S. Army had stepped in and the war had ended, and delivery to Sacramento recommenced. In November of 1860, the Express surprised a lot of people by delivering news of Abraham Lincoln winning the 1860 presidential election to California only 7 days after it was announced in papers on the East Coast. At that time, this was just unheard of. But then came the telegraph. It of course had already existed, but there was no connection all the way to the West Coast. In fact, it was on October 26, 1861, 2 days after a telegram line was finished connecting Sacramento to Omaha, Nebraska, that the Pony Express announced it would cease operations. They had failed to gain the government contract for mail delivery, and the company was running at a loss, even though they had started out charging $5 to send a half-ounce letter, which is $157 in today's money. They had dropped the price down, first to $2.50, then to just $1. They had made over $90,000 in the 18 months, but still lost $200,000, so yeah, the money just wasn't there. And it also didn't help that this whole Civil War thing kind of broke out. But if it was so short-lived, why is it remembered so well? Well, that's mostly due to Buffalo Bill. No, not the lotion one. There you go. Buffalo Bill Cody, who had been a Pony Express rider at 15 years old, went on to butcher a fuck ton of buffalo, and eventually started and toured in his own Wild West show. Stories of bravery, some true, some made up for dime novels that spread the rough, tough, and rugged image of the Wild Wild West spread with the population across the country. A lone rider racing through hostile territory pretty much sums up the American ideal of bravery and individualism. You know, gumption if you will. Oh, and in its entire 18-month existence, the Pony Express only failed to deliver a package on time once. It actually ended up taking 2 years for the mochila to make it from San Francisco to New York. I mean, come on now, that's like ordering something from Wish.